Good morning, Grace Church. It's Dr. Dave coming to you on a Tuesday morning. It seems kind of odd. It's neither blustery. There doesn't seem to be anything disastrous happening. There's no asteroid coming at us or anything like that. So the day's young yet. We'll see. But this morning, wanted to spend a little bit of time in Matthew talking about a parable that a lot of us have heard. And about which we had a little bit of personal experience around our house. This is in Matthew 9, beginning in verse 14. Then John's disciples came and asked him, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not?" And Jesus said, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, then they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment and make the tear worse. Neither do men pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst and the wine will run out and the wineskins will be ruined. Nor do they pour new wine into they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." So there's two groups of people that get lumped together here. There's the disciples of John. This is, of course, talking about Jesus' brother, John the Baptist, or some newer translations now say John the Baptizer, and the Pharisees. And it seems kind of odd that one of John's disciples would lump them together with the Pharisees, but in light of this question, it makes sense. You see, the Pharisees and the disciples of John were, in very different ways, both connected to the old ways, the old Jewish customs, the old way of doing things, and for very different reasons. The Pharisees were connected to the old ways because that was what formed their power base. That was what gave them political power, religious influence, all the things that were important to them. However, the disciples of John were connected to the old ways because John was the last of the great Old Testament prophets. John, in many ways, was the second coming of Elijah, heralding the way for the Messiah. And so it was very important that John's disciples be committed to the old because they were the last of the old ways, ushering in the new ways. Whereas the Pharisees, were not ushering in the new ways. They were simply propagating the old ways and making them even harder and more onerous to pull together their power base. And so that's what Jesus is talking about here when he's making his two comparisons here. First of all, he says, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and then they will fast." Of course, the bridegroom is him. Bridegroom is simply an old archaic term for the groom at a wedding. And of course, the bride is talking about the church. And so this whole business of the bridegroom being with them is just simply sort of a sly way of him identifying himself as the Messiah, and that he's here for a while and he's going to go away. But then he has these two things that some people find really familiar and others are puzzled by. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. So if you talk to Sarah Wright, or if you talk to Roxy, or anyone else that does a lot of sewing, they can tell you exactly what this means. If you go down to your local Notion shop and buy clothing, if you're using that cloth to repair a garment, you need to make sure it's pre-shrunk cloth. Otherwise, you're going to sew it onto your old clothes, and when you wash it, the patch is going to shrink, and it's going to make things worse. And it's the same situation with the wine and the wineskins. You take new wine, which is unfermented grape juice. Back in those days, they would dump all the grapes into a wine press. They would clean their feet a little bit and then stomp around. And then they would take that juice and they would put it into vats, they would put it into wineskins, they would put it into different places, and it would sit there and ferment. And part of the process of fermentation makes carbon dioxide gas, which would then expand the wineskin. And if it's an old wineskin that had already been swollen by making wine, then it would burst and it would spill out, ruin the wineskin, ruin the wine, and nobody would be happy in that situation. So we had a situation around here the last few days that reminded us of this a little bit. We had some old shelving in our shop building that had been there forever. It was just kind of thrown together shelves. It wasn't anything fancy, and for being up there holding lightweight stuff, it was just fine. But we were putting lots of things on there that were probably too heavy for it, and some of the shelves collapsed. And so here we had these old shelves that we were trying to use for a new purpose, but they weren't the right shelves. They couldn't support what we were trying to do, and so the shelves collapsed. And now we're putting up new shelves. And in our lives, we encounter the same sort of thing. We come to God and we say, God, I want you to do this new thing in my life. I'm having all kinds of problems, and I need you to come in and change things and fix things in my life and make things better. But, I kind of like the way things are going right now. I really like the way I'm doing things. I like the habits that I have. I like the people that I'm hanging out with. I like the food that I eat, the things that I'm drinking, the things that I'm doing. But I want you to come in and do, a new thing in my life. And really what Jesus is saying here is that's a little bit of a ludicrous sort of a thing. I have people that come into my office all the time and say this. I want you to help me to lose weight. I want you to help me to fix my diabetes or my high blood pressure. But, I really like eating a lot of tortillas, and I really like eating a lot of McCain's tater tots and French fries, and I really like eating ice cream by the bucket. But I want you to help me to lose weight, or I want to do this and I want to do that. I just don't want to change anything in my life. And this isn't an issue of what we need to do is just work harder and grunt louder, and then change will come, and then God will do a new thing in our life. It's this idea that if we want God to come into our lives and accomplish something new, then we have to be willing to let go of these old things and allow God to bring new things into our lives. We have to be willing to allow God to give us a new wineskin that we can pour new wine into. We have to be willing to allow God to supply new shrunk cloth to patch our old holes with. And it very quickly becomes analogous to the situation in Revelation 3 with the church at Laodicea. And I would encourage you to go read that, where God is encouraging these very wealthy people to buy things from him because they're poor, miserable, wretched, blind, and naked. And then, if you message me, I can give you more details about that. So this business of new wine and old wineskins, unshrunk cloth to patch old garments, really has a lot of meaning and significance for us today. And so I really want to encourage you as you're going about your life today, be thinking, what is it in my life that I really want God to come in and do something about? And what is it that what old habits, what old problems, what old situations do I have laying around in my life that is prohibiting something new from happening in my life? What's getting in the way of God coming in and doing this new work in my life? And begin thinking about and praying about, what do I need to do before God to allow these old things to pass away so that these new things can come and God can do this new work in my life that I'm really wanting him to do, because I see, all these massive holes in my life that need to be fixed. And so, So you guys have a great week. Let's pray for a second real quick, and then let's get on with our week and give a good shout out to Bo as he's up tomorrow giving us our little midweek message. Father, we just thank you for today. We just thank you for this message, Lord, and just pray that you would show each of us what it is in our lives that we're holding on to, that is keeping you from coming in and doing that new work that we desire, Lord. What is it that we need to do to get out of your way to allow you to come into our lives and to work and accomplish these things that only you can do in our lives, Lord? And we just thank you for this in Jesus' name.